In this week's episode of YouTube Art School, I'll show you guys how to go about drawing characters or creatures that look so good they'll become unforgettable to anyone who sees them. Like many of you, I'm sure, I've been playing this little game called Hollow Knight's Silk Song, and its character kind of inspired this video. I thought it was a fantastic example of a simple design that's both effective and memorable, and we'll start with that as the first rule of our 3-step design blueprint. Simplicity is memorable. So we'll get into some pretty deep stuff, but first, let's start simple. Complicated things like complicated directions to go somewhere, or recipes with 3,000 ingredients, or characters with lots of details all have the same thing in common: they're easily forgettable. It's just human nature to struggle remembering a lot of stuff at once. Character design follows the same principle, where simpler ones will usually be easier to remember, so they'll leave a lasting impact. Hornet from the Silk Song game is a great example of that. A cartoony spider that looks more like a stick figure if anything, wearing a big wraparound red cape and a big white head with horns. I mean, in terms of characters, it really doesn't get any more simple than this design. And it's not immediately clear what she is, but we get a hint with the weapon she uses, a needle. It's the fact that she's not anyone's definition of a spider that makes her so intriguing, I think. It's a unique yet clever combination of design elements. Just like a lot of popular characters we all know, like Spider-Man is also inspired by a spider, but doesn't look like one. Sonic is supposed to be a hedgehog, but he's blue and looks more like a humanoid with a hint of a hedgehog if anything. Basically, it's their human figure that helps us connect with them, but it's their simple design that makes them memorable. And this is subjective, of course, but their popularity alone should be a significant sign that their design is successful. Think of some other popular characters you like. Chances are most of them have very simple designs to it, and that's what helped you remember them in the first place. It's always tempting to add more details to our characters just because we can, but simple colors, simple shapes, simple powers, simple ideas, that's the first rule for memorable characters. But in my opinion, even more important than that, the second rule in our blueprint is that storytelling is the foundation of an unforgettable design. Without anything beyond a cool pose and outfit, you're just left with a generic character. So one of the most powerful aspects of design will be your ability to tell a story with just a few visual elements. Tell a story within the first 3 to 4 seconds someone looks at your character. And the next question is, of course, how the heck do you do that? The key thing to remember, I think, is that you don't need to tell a whole story. Often storytelling in design will just spark a thought. Something that will trigger maybe some questions in the viewer's eyes, something that will pique their curiosity because they'll have a hunch that there's more to the character that meets the eye. There's probably thousands of ways to achieve that, but one simple example could be to add damage to your character's outfit. A character in pristine armor might not seem like they've had much history, like they just got the armor or they're just cosplaying, but if you see the same character wearing battered armor, all of a sudden this suggests that something happened to it, right? Again, the storytelling is vague, unclear, maybe it even seems like it wouldn't make much of a difference, but immediately and subconsciously we wonder what might have happened. We're more invested in the character, even if ever so slightly, and that's often all you need. It could also be the example in Silk Song, an unusual item that sparks curiosity, where the character is wielding a needle in combat. A sewing needle, fighting bug monsters using silk skills. It's an unusual spider-inspired combination that sparks more questions than it answers, but there's a subtle, clever aspect to it that makes it stand out. It's not groundbreaking, but it's curious, it's not generic. There's meaning behind it. But it could as well be a unique trinket the character is wearing that's prominently featured, a strange pattern on their outfit, a significant battle scar, a curious badge or logo, anything the character possesses that could seem unusual. And of course, this will be a lot easier to achieve if your characters actually have a background story. Like, for most of my original characters, I'll start with a Dungeons and Dragons type of character sheet, thinking about their personality, what kind of world they live in, what their upbringing might have been like, etc, etc. The more fleshed out their background story is, the easier you should be able to come up with their design. Some things will just naturally make sense to include as part of it, and people will take notice. They might not know as much as you about the characters, but if their designs are inspired by their stories, some of that will come across and it'll make them automatically more memorable. And before we move on to what I consider the most effective design rule to craft memorable characters and creatures, I want to quickly mention the ongoing back-to-school sale for my complete university-level art education program, ArtSchool for Digital Artists. You'll find all the information you might need about it with the link in the video description. It's a massive program going over everything an artist would possibly need to go from zero to professional level. You get lifetime access to all the content, free updates for life, access to the school's private Discord to hang out with other like-minded students, assignments, and a carefully crafted structure to all the content so you're never left wondering if you're on the right path or not. It's my proudest achievement, years in the making, and if you're serious about your art, I definitely recommend you at least check it out. Very epic. Alright, enough of me shamelessly plugging my stuff. Here's the third and most important rule to draw unforgettable characters. The best, most effective, and convincing designs are always inspired by nature. So make this a conscious step in your design process. We kind of touched on this already about Brunet's spider-inspired design. But you'd be surprised, or maybe not if you've been paying attention, but how prevalent this stuff is everywhere because of how well it works. The idea is simple, and it's similar to fan art in a sense. Hitting on the same things where you take something everyone knows about and then you add a different spin to it, helping them get more of what they love maybe, but in a different flavor. Like fan art of a character you like done by an artist you like. But it doesn't have to be something you like. It helps trigger stronger emotions for sure, but it can also just be something you're already familiar with. It's the fact that it's familiar that helps people connect with it. If your character's inspired by something people know nothing about, like some weird robot or an alien shape that nobody's ever seen before, it won't work nearly as well. But thankfully, most people are familiar with animals, dinosaurs, and insects, maybe fascinated by them. Even better. So taking things familiar to everyone like those and putting in a different spin on it always works extremely well, especially when following the previous two rules by making the design simple and giving it a good dose of storytelling. Marvel and DC superheroes feature these rules heavily in their designs. Pokemon's another perfect example, and so many memorable characters in games, series, and movies all do the same thing. And it helps that most animals share roughly 95% of their skeletal and muscular anatomy with humans, because when you remove the superficial layers, we all look very similar. The layout is a bit different, but most of the bones and muscles remain the same. So really, you only need to learn some human anatomy to be able to draw a lot of believable human animal or dinosaur hybrids. Insects are a different story, they're much different, but animals are easy to mix with humans, so maybe start there if you're more focused on humanoid creatures. So putting all of this together, when trying to come up with a new original character to draw, start with a living creature to make a human hybrid with. Maybe you prefer a character that's more human or more creature, but it should have at least one distinct feature from both sides. Then come up with a background story for it, flesh it out as much as possible, enough that you could answer most questions about it if someone asked. And then once you have a good background, list a couple of things your character might be wearing or some physical characteristics it possibly could have that reflect that background story. Anything to help it come across visually, and then start sketching. The simplicity in the design comes last, and I feel that's what works best. So when you have a few sketches you're happy with, start taking stuff out, removing details, simplifying shapes, until you really can't take out anymore. And then if you work that way, I guarantee your characters will be a lot more interesting and memorable than they've been so far. This approach to design is very similar to what you would do, for example, in a game studio working in a video game. The same as what I did for over a decade. And the designs that come out of all of that, those are the ones that tend to stand out from the crowd. There's a lot more to it, of course, but I'd say these are the most important aspects that I could fit in a short YouTube video, so I hope it helps. Let me know in the comments. And I talked about how learning a bit of human anatomy could go a long way in designing all sorts of animal-inspired creatures. So you might want to check out this popular class I made going over the entire human anatomy in 10 minutes. A goldmine, I think, if you're interested in learning that stuff. The link should be up on the screen here, so I'll see you over there.